David stood in the middle of the old spaceport, the smell of rust and oil thick in the air. It was an auction day, and the hangar was filled with people shouting bids, clapping, and laughing. Most of the ships were small traders or cargo haulers. Old but working, David had come here only to look, not to buy. He liked to see broken machines and imagine how to fix them. The auctioneer's voice was loud and sharp, calling out prices. One ship after another was sold quickly. Then, in the far corner of the hangar, the next item rolled forward a massive, strange-looking spacecraft. Its surface was dull silver under thick patches of reddish-brown rust. Some panels were bent, and there were scars along the hull, but it had a certain presence. The air around it felt different, almost alive. Lot 47. The auctioneer shouted, "Unknown model, likely pre-war design. No working registry code, sold as is. Buyer accepts all risks." People laughed and shook their heads. No one wanted a ship that could be trouble with the authorities. A few whispers passed through the crowd. "It's haunted," one man joked. "Last owner vanished." Another whispered. David frowned. It was just a ship, wasn't it? He walked closer, through a crack in one of the side panels. He thought he saw a faint blue light. It was not the flicker of old electronics. It was steady, soft, like the glow of something breathing. Strange, he thought. The glow vanished as quickly as it came. The auctioneer slammed his stick on the floor. Starting price, 5,000 credits. No hands went up. The crowd shifted, people losing interest. 4,000. He tried again. Still no hands. 3,000. Someone take this beauty home. David's heart was beating faster. It was a mess, but under the rust. Maybe it was something rare, something worth restoring. He raised his hand without thinking. 3,000 from the young man there. The auctioneer barked, "Do I hear 3,500? No one else bid. The auctioneer waited, sighed, and slammed his stick again. Sold. To the brave soul in the black jacket. The crowd chuckled, and a few people clapped mockingly. David ignored them. He was already picturing the tools he'd need. But deep inside, there was a strange feeling like he had just stepped onto a path he didn't understand. The paperwork was quick. An assistant handed him a small metal key with a number etched on it. "This opens the main hatch," she said. Her eyes lingered on him for a moment. "Good luck," she added quietly, almost as if it were a warning. When David walked toward his new ship, the hangar was almost empty. The size of it was more impressive up close taller than a two-story building, wide enough to carry a small fleet inside. The hull was covered in strange circular plates and symbols he didn't recognize. Not human design. His footsteps echoed as he climbed the short metal stairs to the hatch. The hatch door had a faded emblem scratched away by time. He slid the key into a small slot and turned it. With a hiss, the lock disengaged. But before he could push the door open, it moved on its own, just a crack enough for warm air to escape and touch his face. It smelled faintly sweet, like flowers after rain. David hesitated. No one had been on this ship for years, according to the auction listing. So, why was it warm inside? He stepped back and looked around. The hangar was almost silent now, only a few workers cleaning up. He leaned in again and pushed the door open wider. The inside was dark. Then a light came on somewhere deeper. Inside, not a normal white light, but a pale blue glow, soft and steady. David's chest tightened. He thought about the stories from the crowd-haunted ship. Vanished owner. He didn't believe in ghosts, but something about this moment made the hairs on his arms stand up. "Hello?" He called inside. No answer. The echo of his voice sounded strange, like the walls were swallowing it. He placed one foot on the metal floor of the ship. The warmth under his boot felt almost alive, like he was stepping onto the skin of some sleeping giant. From deep in the shadows, there was a sound, a faint slow movement like someone walking barefoot on metal. David froze. His mind raced. Maybe a stowaway? Maybe a wild animal. The light shifted, brighter now, and, for a moment, he thought he saw a figure of human shape standing in the corridor ahead. It was gone the next second. David stepped back out onto the stairs. The hangar air felt colder than before. He looked. At the open door, his heart pounded with a mix of fear and excitement. He had bought an old ship for its engines and scrap value. But now he wasn't sure if he had just bought a machine or something else entirely inside the ship. In the pale blue light, something moved again, slow and graceful. And this time, David knew for certain he was not alone. David stood frozen at the open hatch. The pale blue light inside the ship pulsed softly like the glow of deep-sea creatures. The warmth spilling from the doorway felt alive, wrapping around him like invisible hands. He told himself it was just an old environmental system still running, but deep down, he didn't believe it. He stepped onto the ship's floor again. The metal was smooth under his boots, no dust at all. Strange if no one had been here for years. Why was it so clean? The air was richer, heavier than outside. Every breath felt like it carried a strange taste, sweet, but not from anything he knew. The corridor ahead curved gently, the blue light spilling from somewhere deeper inside. David moved forward slowly. His hand brushing the wall, it felt warm, not cold metal. And there were faint patterns under his fingers like veins. He pulled his hand back quickly, trying to ignore the thought that the ship might be. Alive from ahead came the sound again. Soft, barefoot steps. They were slow, deliberate, almost like whoever was inside wanted him to hear. "Hello," David called, his voice low but steady. No answer. The sound stopped, replaced by silence. So deep he could hear his own heartbeat. He reached a wider part of the corridor. Where the blue light came from, it glowed from thin lines in the walls, pulsing gently as if matching a slow heartbeat. There was also another light, faint and shifting, like it was reflecting off water. David stepped closer. Then he saw her. She stood in the middle of the room, bare feet on the smooth floor. Her skin was the same rich blue as the light around them, but deeper. It had a soft shimmer, as if it was dusted with silver powder. Her long, dark hair framed a face that was not human, but still breathtaking, sharp cheekbones. Eyes too large, glowing. Faintly from within, her body was athletic yet graceful, dressed in a strange two-piece garment made of metallic fibers that caught the light. David froze mid-step. She didn't move, only watched him with calm, unreadable eyes. Then, in a voice soft but clear, she spoke. "You, my new captain." Her words were slow, each one carefully shaped, as if she was not used to speaking his language. David blinked. "What?" She tilted her head slightly, her gaze never leaving his. "You open ship," she said. "Keyholder is captain." Her tone was flat, but there was a quiet weight behind the words. It was not a question. It was a fact. David glanced around, looking for hidden speakers or hologram projectors. This had to be some kind of advanced AI system, but no, her breath made a faint mist in the warm air, and he could hear the soft sound of her skin brushing against the fabric she wore. She was real. Who are you?" he asked. She stepped closer, her bare feet making no sound on the floor. "I am Lyra," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes scanned him in a way that made him feel as if she was seeing more than just his face. Like she was looking inside him. "You are human?" she added, the words sounding strange in her mouth. "Yes," David replied automatically. "You're not." Her lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "No," she said simply. Then she walked past him, moving toward the open hatch. Her movements were fluid, almost too smooth. David turned to watch her. When she reached the hatch, she stopped, placed one hand on the frame, and looked out at the empty hangar. This place. Smells of rust, she murmured. Almost to herself, David didn't know what to say. He felt as if his mind was running to catch up with what his eyes were seeing. Finally, he asked, "How long have you been here?" Lyra turned her head slightly. "Many cycles," she said. "I wait for next captain." Her voice was calm, but there was something behind it, a shadow of loneliness. She walked back inside, closing the hatch with a smooth motion of her hand. The door sealed with a hiss, and David realized there was no visible control panel. "How did you?" he began. She held up her hand. "The ship knows me," she said. "It listens." David glanced at the glowing lines in the walls, and for the first time, he thought he saw them pulse brighter when she spoke. Lyra studied him for a moment, then said, "You must eat." He blinked, caught off guard. "I'm fine," he said. "No," she replied. "You are pale." "Ship will feed you." Before he could ask what she meant, a section of the wall slid open, revealing a small compartment with a steaming bowl of something that looked like soup, but the color was a deep green, glowing faintly. David hesitated. Lyra stepped closer, placing the bowl in his hands. Her fingers brushed his, and in that instant, a sharp electric sensation ran up his arm. Not painful, but startling. She looked into his eyes and said quietly, "You are here now. That means we are not safe." The words hung in the air between them, and though David had only just met her, he knew she was telling the truth. David sat on a narrow bench built into the wall. The bowl of green glowing soup sat untouched in his hands. Lyra stood a few steps away, watching him with those calm, unblinking eyes. It was like she was studying his every movement, not in a threatening way, but with deep curiosity. He finally asked, "What do you mean? We're not safe?" Lyra tilted her head slightly, as if weighing how much to say. "The ship is not forgotten," she said slowly. "It is hunted." David frowned. "Why?" "It's just an old, okay, maybe strange spaceship." Lyra's gaze sharpened. "This is not just a ship. It is alive." David blinked, thinking he had misheard. Alive. Like artificial intelligence. Lyra shook her head, her long hair moving like black silk. "No, not machine mind. Real mind. Grown from my people's seed technology. Flesh and metal together." Her hand brushed the wall, and the glowing blue veins pulsed brighter at her touch. "The ship hears you, feels you. It knows you are here." David looked around slowly. The faint hum under his boots seemed louder now, almost like a heartbeat. "That's possible," he said, but the words sounded weak. Lyra's eyes softened. "For humans, maybe. For my people, it is how we travel." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The last captain. He was taken." David's stomach tightened. "Taken? By who?" Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "Hunters," she said. "Collectors. They sell rare ships. And rare beings." Her eyes locked onto his. "They wanted me, too." David felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air temperature. "You've been hiding here all this time." She nodded once. "Ship kept me safe. It closed itself, would not open. Until you, David, tried to process this. So why now? Why open for me?" Lyra looked away for the first time. Her voice quieter. "Ship chooses. I do not know why. Maybe it trusts you." A silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the ship. David's mind was a storm. Half of him wanted to believe her. The other half was screaming that this was too strange to be true. But every time his eyes followed the faint blue lines in the walls, he saw them pulse gently, as if they were breathing. Lyra walked to a section of the room and placed her palm on the wall. It rippled like the surface of water, and then opened into a new corridor. "This way," she said. David hesitated, then followed. The corridor was darker here, but the walls still glowed faintly. The floor under his boots was softer, almost like padded leather, at the end. Lyra stopped and gestured toward a large, oval-shaped room. "This is the heart," she said. In the center stood a massive structure that looked half like an engine, and half like the inside of a seashell. Blue light pulsed from it in slow waves. David stepped closer, feeling a vibration through the air. "This is alive," he asked quietly. Lyra nodded. "Here is where the ship grows itself, heals itself. This is why it cannot be replaced." He turned toward her. "Why would anyone want to steal you? I mean, I get that you're different." But Lyra's voice was firm. "Because I am last." David froze. "Last what?" She looked at him, and for the first time, there was something like pain in her expression. "Last of my kind," she said simply. "My people are gone. My world, gone. Hunters killed them, took what they could, and sold the rest." David's throat felt dry. "And you've been hiding here ever since?" Lyra's eyes hardened again. "Yes, the ship was my family's. When they died, it bonded to me. It will only open for someone it believes will not harm it." She stepped closer. "Now it is open for you." David took a slow breath. "And if I turned you in?" Lyra's gaze was like ice. "Then they will take you too. Ship will not forgive." Her tone wasn't a threat, it was a truth. David didn't doubt her for a second. He tried to lighten the moment with a shaky smile. "Guess I don't have much choice, huh?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "You always have choice. Choices have cost." David looked at the living walls, at the glowing veins that pulsed like they were listening. Somehow, deep down, he knew that from the moment he turned that key, his old life was already gone. He set the bowl of untouched soup on a small ledge. "What happens now?" he asked. Lyra's answer came without hesitation. "Now, they will come for us." The next morning, David left the ship early. The spaceport was waking up cargo. Lifters hummed, traders shouted prices, and the air smelled of burnt fuel and stale coffee. He needed supplies, food, tools, fuel cells, anything to keep the ship running. But as soon as he stepped into the main market row, he felt it. Eyes. People were watching him. It started small. 2 dock workers, pausing mid-conversation as he passed. A trader glancing up too quickly, then he heard whispers. "That's him." He bought the ghost ship. David pretended not to notice. He told himself it was just curiosity, but the looks didn't feel like harmless curiosity. They felt like measuring, deciding what he was worth. In a narrow stall, David traded a handful of credits for a box of nutrient packs. The vendor leaned in and said quietly, "You should leave." David frowned. "Why?" The man's eyes darted toward the market entrance. "Some things in this port are better left alone. That ship you bought? Not worth your life." Before David could reply, the vendor turned away, busying himself with another customer. By the time David returned to the ship's docking bay, 2 men were standing near the hatch ramp. They weren't wearing port uniforms, black jackets, clean boots, and the kind of stillness that came from knowing they didn't have to run from anyone. One of them smiled when he saw David, but it was the wrong kind of smile. "Nice ship," the man said. "Not for sale," David replied. The man's smile widened. "Everything's for sale." Sometimes the owner doesn't even have to agree. David kept walking. The second man stepped in his path. "You didn't check the fine print, did you?" he said, his voice low. "That ship doesn't belong to you. It belongs to whoever can hold on to it." David's jaw tightened. "Then, I guess I'll hold on." The first man chuckled. "Brave. Stupid, but brave," before things could go further. A soft hiss came from behind them. The ship's hatch opened halfway, and Lyra stepped into view. She wasn't holding a weapon, but something about her presence made the men go still. Her eyes glowed faintly. her voice calm but sharp. "Leave," she said. It wasn't loud, but it carried like a blade through the air. The men exchanged a look, half confusion, half unease. Then the first one forced a laugh. "Pretty face like yours shouldn't hide on a junk heap. Come with us, we can." The words cut off mid-sentence. The blue lines in the ship's hull flared bright, and the air around the men shimmered like heat haze. Both flinched back, sweat instantly beating on their skin. "What the?" One of them muttered. "Last warning," Lyra said. They didn't wait for a second. The two backed away, muttering curses, and disappeared into the port crowd. David climbed the ramp, his pulse still racing. "What did you do to them?" he asked once they were inside. Lyra's expression didn't change. "Ship doesn't like threats," she said simply. David glanced at the walls, those faint, glowing lines, unrealized. The ship had reacted like an animal defending its territory. "You could have warned me," he said. "I did," she replied, and walked deeper inside. That night, David sat in the cockpit, staring at the port's traffic logs. Ships were coming and going every hour, but one record caught his eye. Small freighter had arrived the same day he bought the ship. It hadn't left since, and its crew manifest was locked. His gut told him it wasn't a coincidence. Lyra appeared behind him silently. "You feel it?" she said. He nodded. "Yeah. Someone's waiting for the right moment." Lyra looked out through the cockpit glass at the port beyond. "They won't wait long," she said. "Hunters never do." David leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Then we should leave before they make their move." Lyra's gaze stayed on the stars. Beyond the port walls, leaving is not so simple. The ship, it needs time to wake fully. Long sleep makes it slow. David frowned. "How much time?" Lyra's voice was quiet. 2 days. Maybe less. If it feels danger, those 2 days stretched into a constant watch. David made short supply runs, always with the feeling of eyes on him. Once, he caught sight of the 2 men from before, speaking to another group near the port security gates. When they noticed him watching, they smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. On the second night, it happened. David was in the ship's lower maintenance corridor when he heard the hatch seals hiss. Someone was trying to override the lock. He ran to the ramp. 2 shadowy figures were halfway up, tools in hand. Before David could yell, the blue veins in the ramp flared to blinding light. The intruders screamed and stumbled back. Clutching their eyes, Lyra was suddenly beside him, though he hadn't heard her approach. "They will come again," she said. David's heart was pounding. "Not if we're gone." Lyra met his gaze, and this time, she didn't argue. The ship's heart chamber pulsed faster that night. David could feel it through the floor, a deep vibration running into his boots. Lyra said it meant the ship was waking outside. The spaceport was quieter than usual, but David didn't trust the silence. They worked side by side in the lower maintenance bay. David replaced cracked wiring with what little spare cable he had. Lyra adjusted strange crystal-like cores inside the walls, parts that didn't look like any human technology. The glowing veins around those cores flared bright each time her fingers touched them, almost like they were happy to see her. "How much longer?" David asked, wiping sweat from his face. "Soon," Lyra said, her eyes on a shifting pattern of lights. "Inside the wall, the ship knows we are leaving." "It is?" "Preparing." A faint noise broke the moment, metal footsteps outside. David froze. Lyra tilted her head, listening. "They are here," she whispered. David ran to the cockpit, checking the exterior cameras for figures in dark gear. "We're moving along the docking bay." They weren't port security too quiet. Too fast. One carried a small case, and David's gut told him it wasn't tools for fixing anything. "Hunters," Lyra said behind him. "They will try to take the ship before it leaves." David's hands moved quickly over the controls. "Then, we're leaving now," he said. "The ship is not ready." Lyra warned, "It'll have to." B. Outside, the figures reached the base of the ramp. David hit the hatch controls. The ramp retracted with a hiss, sealing shut just as one of the intruders tried to grab it. Something metallic clanged against the holomagnetic clamp. "They're locking us in," David shouted. Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. "Not for long," she said, placing her palm on the wall. The ship responded instantly. There was a deep, rolling sound, like thunder trapped in a metal box. The glowing veins along the hull flared so bright, they turned the cockpit a pale blue. Outside, the clamps began to smoke. Seconds later, they fell away. Clattering against the docking bay floor, "Strap in," Lyra said, moving to the co-pilot seat. David slammed the main thrusters online. The ship groaned, as if waking from a long, painful sleep. Then it lifted slow at first, then faster, rising above the docking bay floor. Sirens wailed across the spaceport. "They'll send port interceptors," David said. Lyra nodded. Her voice calm. "Let them try." They cleared the docking bay doors, and the cold black of space spread out before them. David pushed the throttle. Forward, engines roaring to life. The ship moved faster than he expected. Then, a warning light flashed to blips, closing in on the radar. "Interceptors," David muttered. "Small, fast ships. Already changing course to block them." "They're faster than us," he said. Lyra didn't look worried. "The ship can go where they cannot." David gave her a quick glance. "And where's that?" Her lips curved slightly between, she said, before he could ask. She placed both hands on the glowing console. The ship reacted instantly. Lights inside dimmed. The hum under their feet turned into a deep, steady beat. Outside, the stars began to twist, stretching into long ribbons of light. David gripped the controls tightly. "What's happening?" "Jump," Lyra said, her voice steady, "not through human space." Through the ship's space, the cockpit windows went black. For a moment, no stars. No planets, only a strange swirling blue mist. David's stomach flipped, and every instinct screamed that this wasn't normal space travel. It felt like being inside a living thing, moving through veins instead of the void. "How long can we stay here?" he asked. "As long as we need," Lyra replied, "but the ship is still weak. We must rest it soon." David glanced at the sensors. The interceptors were gone. No trace of them. "They can't follow us here?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "No human ship can. Only those grown like this one." The mist outside began to thin, replaced by the glitter of distant stars. The ship eased out of the strange tunnel, engines humming at a more relaxed pace. David let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "We made it," he said. "For now," Lyra replied, her tone making it clear they weren't safe yet. David leaned back in his seat, the tension in his body starting to fade. Then he remembered something she'd said earlier: the ship chooses. He looked over at her. "Why did it choose me, Lyra?" She met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "Because it knows. Your story is not finished." The ship drifted quietly through open space. But David couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere the hunters were already planning their next move. And next time, they wouldn't just try to take the ship, they'd come for both of them. The ship drifted in the quiet darkness for hours after the jump. David sat in the cockpit, watching the faint glow of the blue veins along the walls. Lyra stood beside him, silent, her gaze fixed on the star map flickering above the console. Finally, she spoke. "We cannot stay in empty space," she said. "The ship needs to feed." David raised an eyebrow. "Feed? Like fuel?" Lyra's eyes shifted to him. "Yes, but not your fuel. It drinks from worlds." She touched the star map, and one bright point swelled into view, a green and silver planet orbiting a twin star system. "This place is rich," she said. "Safe to land, but not safe to linger." David didn't like the sound of that. Why not linger? Lyra's voice was calm, because others watch it too. The ship approached the planet hours later from orbit. David saw oceans the color of polished steel and massive white clouds curling over emerald continents. The landing took them through layers of thin mist until they touched down in a wide valley. The ground was covered in plants that looked like silver grass, swaying even though there was no wind. When the hatch opened, a rush of warm, fragrant air flooded inside. It smelled like a mix of rain and spice. David stepped out cautiously, boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The sky was pale green here, with the twin suns casting long, shifting shadows. Lyra walked ahead, barefoot. The plants seemed to lean toward her as she passed, their silver blades brushing her ankles. David couldn't tell if it was a trick of the wind or something else. "This world is alive," Lyra said, without looking back. "It listens, like the ship." They reached a shallow stream, its water glowing faintly under the strange light. Lyra knelt and placed her hands in it. The water's glow brightened, and David felt the ground under him vibrate softly. Far behind them, the ship's hull pulsed brighter. "It drinks now," Lyra said, her voice almost reverent. David crouched beside her. "You've done this before," he said. She nodded slowly. "Yes, many times. Always running, always hiding." There was a long silence. Finally, David asked, "Who are you really, Lyra?" Her fingers moved through the glowing water. "I told you, I am the last of my kind," she said. "But I was not always alone." She looked at him then, and her eyes were sharper than he had ever seen. "My people built ships like this one. We called them Starborn. They were not tools, they were family. The Starborn carried us between the suns. They grew with us, lived with us." Her voice softened when the hunters came. "They destroyed most of the Starborn and the people who cared for them." Her gaze turned distant. "My bonded Starborn, my family's ship, died protecting me. This ship. It took me in." David felt the weight of her words. "Those hunters," he said, "they're still after you, aren't they?" Lyra's expression didn't change. "Yes. And now they know you exist. They will not stop." Before David could answer, a low hum cut through the air. It wasn't the ship, it came from the sky. Lyra's head snapped up. "Too soon, she whispered." David followed her gaze. 3 dark shapes were cutting through the green sky, their outlines sharp against the twin suns. "Small craft, fast. They followed us here," David said. Lyra's voice was steady. "They follow me everywhere." They ran back toward the ship, the silver grass bending away from them as if clearing a path. The hum grew louder, joined by the high-pitched whine of engines. Blaster fire cracked through the air, striking the ground and sending sprays of glowing soil into the air. The ship's hatch opened before they reached it. David jumped inside first, pulling Lyra with him. "Go," he shouted. The ship didn't wait, it lifted in one smooth motion. The valley dropping away beneath them. The attackers followed, weaving between blasts of plasma from the ship's defenses. "Hold them," Lyra said to the console. The blue veins along the hull flared, and the ship moved with sudden speed, twisting through the sky like a living creature avoiding predators. One of the pursuing craft clipped a tree-sized crystal formation and spun out of control. The others stayed on their tail. David's hands gripped the controls. "We can't outrun them forever," he said. Lyra's gaze locked on the stars above. "Then we don't outrun, we vanish." She placed her hands on the glowing console again. The ship responded instantly, the stars above stretching and twisting. The green sky bled into blue mist. In seconds, the planet was gone. The attackers were gone. Only the strange, endless, in-between space surrounded them. David's chest heaved. "That's twice you've saved us like this." Lyra didn't answer immediately. Finally, she said quietly, "Next time, it may not be enough." The blue mist swirled slowly outside. David stared into it, wondering just how far they could run before the hunters caught up again. The ship drifted in the blue mist for hours. It was quiet, too quiet. David sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the strange swirling outside. He could feel the tension in the air, the way the ship's hum had grown slower, heavier. Lyra stood at the console, her fingers moving gently over its glowing surface. "She's tired," Lyra said softly. "We cannot jump again without rest." David leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "If we stop, they'll catch us." Lyra's eyes didn't. "Leave the console. They will catch us either way." The words hit harder than David expected. He had been trying to believe they could keep running forever. But Lyra was right, the hunters were always close. Always watching, and then, as if summoned by the thought. The ship's soft hum changed to a sharp pulse. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They've found us." The mist outside thinned. Through it, David saw the shape of another ship emerging, massive, black and shaped like the blade of a knife. It dwarfed their own vessel. On its side was a glowing red crested circle split by 3 jagged lines. Lyra's voice was low, almost a whisper. "Corin." David glanced at her. "The one who's been chasing you?" Her jaw tightened. "He is not chasing. He is claiming." A deep, rumbling voice filled the cockpit. "Lyra," it said. The sound wasn't coming from speakers, was in the air itself, vibrating through the walls. "You have run far enough." David's grip on the controls tightened. He opened the comms. "She's not going with you," he said. There was a pause, then a low laugh. "And who are you? Human?" "Another fool she hides behind." David felt the heat rise in his chest. But before he could speak, Lyra stepped forward. "Corin," she said clearly, "you have no claim over me." The laugh came again. Colder this time. "You were promised. You were mine. You ran from the bond." David's eyes flicked to Lyra. "You were supposed to marry this guy?" Lyra didn't answer. Her gaze locked on the dark ship ahead. "It was not a marriage," she said finally, her voice sharp. "It was a cage." The massive black ship began to move closer from its underside. 3 smaller crafts detached, circling like predators. David's hands hovered over the controls. "We can fight," he said. Lyra shook her head. "No, not yet. The ship is too weak. It will not survive a battle here." Corin's voice came again. "Come willingly, Lyra, and I will let your human live." David shot her a look. "You're not actually thinking about going with him, are you, Lyra's?" Eyes softened for just a second. "If I do not, he will destroy you. He will destroy the ship." Something in David snapped at that. "No, I'm not letting you trade yourself for me. That's not happening." She looked at him, and for the first time, there was a hint of fear in her expression. Not fear for herself, but for him. David's mind raced. The ship was alive, but weak. Corin's hunters were faster, stronger. They couldn't fight him head-on, but maybe? "They didn't have to, Lyra," David said quickly. "Can the ship still jump?" She hesitated. "Yes, but only once." "And not far. That's enough," David said. A plan forming in his head, he leaned closer to her, lowering his voice. "Tell the ship to jump, but not to another system. Tell it to jump inside his ship." Lyra's eyes widened. "That is dangerous." David grinned tightly. "So's everything else we've done." She placed her hands on the console, speaking in a low, musical language David didn't understand. The ship's hum rose sharply. Outside, Corin's black vessel loomed closer. The smaller crafts tightened their circle, preparing to strike, and then the stars bent. The blue mist flared bright, and the ship surged forward. When the light cleared, David found himself staring at walls of black metal all around them. They were inside the docking bay of Corin's massive ship. Before the enemy could react, David slammed every thruster control forward. The living ship twisted like a serpent in the confined space, smashing into fuel pods and weapon racks. Explosions lit the docking bay, and alarms screamed through the air. Lyra held the console as the ship spun, guiding it through chaos with inhuman precision. Now? David shouted. The ship jumped again, tearing through the side of Corin's vessel in a burst of blue light. They shot back into open space, debris trailing behind them. David looked over at Lyra, breathing hard. "You okay?" She nodded, though her hands were trembling. "Corin will live," she said. "But his ship will not chase us for some time." David leaned back, finally allowing himself to breathe. "Good. Gives us time to figure out what's next." Lyra looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "Now. We are both far from home, but we are home together." The ship drifted quietly, the blue veins along its walls pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm. Somewhere out there, Corin was still alive, but for now, they had one, and for David, that was enough.